Who does Martin Tyler support?
Why must I have a Premier League team? When QPR went 2-1 up in that game, you shouted too loud. I've been very, very fortunate. If you asked me to do Aguero now, I couldn't do it. I try to see history before my eyes, really.
You got the G pass now.
You are the godfather of the scene.
Arsenal won the league at Tottenham.
He's a Spurs fan, right? Salah has scored.
And it's more than a sending off, it's a brawl.
I'm of that ideology.
Yeah, but that kind of football finished 30 years ago.
We're saying Gerrard in your voice.
Gerrard? Some people are on the pitch, they think it's all over. Kenneth Wilson and we won the World Cup in 1966.
Wow.
I'd done the Maradona handball game. You keep that as car news.
And it's live!
Yeah, well, the sound had failed at Sky. Achieving something is doable. Sustaining it is much, much harder. This is FCM on DR Sports, and it's live!
Yes, people, welcome back to another episode of FCM Football Culture Movement. Now listen, I know you're used to us being live, talking about the game, but today we're going bigger and beyond that. We have someone with us who goes beyond football, transcends football many ways. This person is football, the voice of football. Literally the voice. You know what it is to be the voice of something, to be the pinnacle. Cam, I'm going to let you say a few words. I'm going to let you get a few bars off of who this person is and what this person means to us.
I think when you hear about the voice of football, instantly you think of the great man, Martin Tyler. Do you know what I mean? Let's give him a round of applause first of all. Let's give him a round of applause.
It's very kind of you.
Honestly, I feel like this is one that we've always earmarked before. We've always said, imagine we got Martin Tyler on the podcast. Like, how incredible would that be? Yeah. Because we're all young, but we've grown up with you as the voice. Literally, like, I can't think of football. Even when we're talking off air, nostalgia's going from my head. When I called Martin, I said, yeah, hi, you know, and I was like, this feels like this is weird. like
daydream.
This doesn't feel right. Do you know what I mean? But honestly, like, we just want to first and foremost give you your flowers. We think you're absolutely incredible. And we're going to talk through your career and talk through everything football as well. But honestly, I think from all of us, we just think you're an absolute legend. And, you know, I was looking through, why are you not Sir Martin Tyler yet? Why is he not Sir Martin Tyler, please? That's one position. Then the next one, we were speaking off air as well. We have heard that you are not in the Premier League Hall of Fame. So if the Premier League are watching this right now, let's start getting our inductions in for Martin Tyler. Welcome to the show, man.
Welcome.
I think I should go now. Yeah, you've been so nice to me. You've given me a seat much more comfortable than any gantry I've sat on in the last 50 years. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Now, Martin, of course, you've had an illustrious career and there's so much to get into. Almost too much. As you mentioned, if someone's the voice of football, there's so many moments that come along with that. And we're going to get into a lot. I feel like because of how in-depth your career is, there's a lot that someone like yourself can speak to that no one else can. You've seen it all. You've been through it all. But I want to ask, how are you at the moment? Because you've got a few things going on at the moment, haven't you?
Yes, I mean, I'm still commentating. As you know, a couple of years ago, Sky and I parted company. It was their decision. I have absolutely no regrets, no complaints. They were wonderful to me. And I had a fabulous run. They gave me an opportunity for you to say those kind words about me. It's really, I say those kind words about Sky, because without that, I did obviously start ITV, and I must mention them in the conversation as well. So I've been very, very fortunate. And I'm still working for what we call in the business the world feed, which means it doesn't get broadcast in this country, although there are ways you can hear it, but I mustn't encourage people to do that, because and people do come up and say, I heard you. And I go, no, you didn't. I'm obviously commentator. Get mistaken for each other from time to time. And I go, it must be somebody else, you know, Guy Mowbray or Sam Matterface or something like that. And they go, no, you said this, didn't you? And I went, well, I did. And Anyway, so it's supposed to go to the world, and it's free of the domestic comments that you would get on Sky or TNT, where you're saying coming up next after this, and obviously when you're watching around the world, if people are saying that it's not coming up next after that, so we're sort of like a clean without any commercial side to it, and we call the game. And I'm very lucky to be doing some of those, both in the Premier League, for the Premier League, and also in the Champions League and the FA Cup as well. So I thought I'd be had a little bit more spare time, but actually I'm busier than I guess. The prep it's really important to as you get older. Age is something that you have to persuade people that you're not too old to do it. So there's much more, not pressure, because it's just a privilege to people still ask me to do it. When I did my first game back in 1974, my first television commentary, at the end of the game, I thought it was 2 in 1, like my first and my last. And the producer at the end said, well, we've got another one in a couple of weeks. Would you like to do that? And my glib line is that people have been saying we've got another one in a couple of weeks for 50 years since then, and happily that's still going on. So I'm good. I'm doing a podcast. It's kind of you obviously give me an opportunity to do that. The Joy of Football. I co-host with a guy, Neil Barnett, who has an excellent journalist reputation, radio journalist, particularly in the United States, because he worked for Sirius XM, which is the big station for soccer in America, and was of course a very high-profile celebrity, almost pitch announcer for Chelsea for many years, and so we found ourselves at a similar time with maybe a day in the week free. So let's do something. And we've just reached episode 50.
That's it. That's what
you go follow that and subscribe to that as well.
If you'd like to join us, the Joy of Football on all the platforms that you would expect. So that's the commercial done from my point of view. Come on, fire the football questions.
We love that, because it's almost like you're in the world of podcasting with us now. You're still kind of doing the commentating, which is kind of the legacy of what has kind of made you.
I always thought that that podcast would be something that I'd listen to them, I admire them, but actually doing them, and I can see you've got all the kit here, and very, very professional. And for people who think it's just something that's thrown together, I promise you it's not. A lot of creativity goes in, and it is part of the scene. It's definitely part of the scene. I've never really been a member of the scene, but I do.
Welcome. You got the G pass now.
You birthed the scene. You are the godfather of the scene.
No, but it's lovely to be, and from my end of the scale in terms of age, and your end, you've got so much to look forward to, and you can bring so much, and the game is going to move forward for you guys. I'm often part of conversation, particularly with Neil, about it's not, we should be doing this, and it's not as good as it was. But I don't believe in that. I believe you have the time. And when I started watching football, everyone was talking about how they changed the offside law back in 1924 or something like that. And whatever it is, there'll be an issue, and whatever it is, the game triumphs because it's the most glorious game. And the reason I've been involved with it, I'm sure it's the same for you, that we love the game. We love the game. And I love the people involved in it as well. I think it brings the best out of people by and large. You're as strong as your weakest link, so it teaches good values for young people as well as the experienced professionals,
And to be fair, even like having you on, that's kind of what we want to do. We want to kind of learn almost from the best and kind of hear the path that you've kind of blazed, to be fair. And let's even go back a little bit, because obviously we all know you as the famous commentator, but how did you even get into the football world? And I know we're going back to the 60s, but am I right in saying you started off as a ghostwriter for Jimmy Hill at the Times? Was that kind of your first foray into the football world?
My first foray into the football world was as a fan, and I've been a Woking fan since I was 8. In fact,
there we go.
This week I went back to the spot where I stood. The ground is pretty similar configuration, and where I stood, you still stand. And so I was able to just look at it through. It was December 1953, so I've done 70 years as a Woking fan. And but I wanted to be a player, and so I went to university. I played in the university team, there wasn't much coaching for kids at my age, so I was never really coached until I got into senior football at university. I went to University of East Anglia and in Norwich, and we played against Norwich City reserves, and we had some contact with one or two of their coaches, so we got some proper coaching there. And then I joined Corinthian Casuals, who were in the Isthmian League, which was it was no conference then, so it was the top. In the Southeast, top. I wasn't a top player, but I'm proud to have played in it because players went straight up front. I'm now an extinct breed, the big lump up front. They don't exist.
Make it stick.
Yeah, and I'd go, hold it up. You can. I'm afraid detect a little bit of. Extra feeling for anybody playing up front if they don't do it, but they're not built like me anymore. So they're all footballing players. I was just stick it in the box and he'll head it if you can. That was my game. So I had a go. That was coached by some good people there, including George Cohen, who played in the World Cup final for England, who was coming to the end of his career through injury and was doing his coaching badges, and we had a stint with him. And then I got a job. On a magazine, which meant I could still play. So it was a Monday to Friday job, really. And I got that through knowing somebody. Somebody knew me, actually, and said, oh, you're not, apart from, I wasn't earning too much money. And they said, okay, come and use your football knowledge in this. And I got a lucky break there. I had to blag my way into that. It was a secret project, and the guy... I got a phone number and I rang up. The guy said, you shouldn't know this, it's top secret. And all I knew about journalism was a journalist doesn't reveal his sources. So that was what I said to the guy. How did I know it? That was my first journalistic line. It was a cliche, but it was a good one. I got an interview and I got a job. So I had that for about 2 years. Actually, the first day I started was the beginning of May 1971. My first day was a Monday, and that night Arsenal won the league at Tottenham.
These are Spurs fan, right?
Trying to leave them home.
Good memories.
Even back then, I apologise. I don't know which corns I'm treading on here, but
Spurs fan, lifelong suffering.
And that was the first leg of the double, and on the Saturday they won the cup. That was my first week as a sort of magazine journalist. I didn't go to either of the events, but obviously some people did. You could pitch up. You could just go to White Hart Lane if you. I know it was a 7:30, 7:45 kickoff. If you got there at 5 o'clock, you queued up, you get in. And some of the guys I was working with on that day I'd never met before. They went, and then through that I met some people in television, because what I was doing meant occasionally popping to the studios of London Weekend Television, and I got offered a job which meant giving up playing, so I said no. And and then I was doing the ghosting. That's how we got onto this. I was ghostwriting for Jimmy Hill, who was if you like, the Gary Lineker of his time. And he said
Hill's Sunday supplements.
That's the same Jimmy Hill.
Something you don't know. You might have seen that on Sky Sports. And
Well, Jimmy was a player, not a very elegant one, but an effective one. And he was chairman of the PFA, and he took on the structure of payment, which was archaic, with the maximum wage. And they went to court, and they won their freedom. That's basically what it was. And obviously the money that's on offer today in the game really can trace back to Jimmy winning that court case with the player George Easton, who's sadly passed away recently, who was a member of England's World Cup squad, played for England, and he went into court, and they tore it to shreds, the archaic form of employment. So
he's had a big impact on the pitch, and then
he became a manager. He became a manager at Coventry. Got Coventry into the First Division, the old First Division, in the late 1960s, and then gave it up. He never managed in the First Division, and became a television personality, and so. He was so busy, so I'm now talking 1973. And I got a message from somebody, because I've been working on this magazine, saying, "Oh, Jimmy needs his a ghost writer for his column for one of the Sunday papers." So I was,
And then is that how you kind of pivoted as a because you became a producer after that on The Big Match.
I didn't become a producer. You're very kind. I was an editorial assistant. Thanks to Jimmy, because Jimmy.
I was going to say, was it that kind of
initial
relationship?
It was a one.
That
Listen, you look at things and think, I don't know, destiny or fate or whatever you believe it. I was offered this job just because I knew somebody in television, and then I happened to go to Jimmy's house to. I used to write out the article by hand because I couldn't type. I wasn't a trained journalist, and there was no internet or anything like that. Miles away, backwards. And he happened to be there, so we sat down. He made me a cup of coffee, and I just gave him the envelope with and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I've been offered this job where you were working." And he went. But why haven't you said yes? I said, well, I want to keep playing. And in the end, he just looked me in the eye and said, how good are you as a player? I was 27, I think. And I said, but I love playing. And he went, go home, phone them up, take the job. And there's very words for it. You never know where it will lead you. Well, it's lead me onto this lovely.
There we go. Yes.
So I went home, still half hoping that they would say the job's gone. And I was a big viewer. I watched all the football. I knew what I would be going into, but even so, the pull of playing was that much greater. And they went, yeah, come in. It's still there. Come in next week. We'll have a chat. So then I went in and they said, right, we'll give you 6 months trial, see how you go. So now I'm committed, really. So I've got to go to the football club and say, sorry, I've got to go, And half hoping again that the manager, who's a wonderful man called Mickey Stewart, who's still alive, he's 92. Alex Stewart's his son, very famous in the world of cricket. And Mickey was a professional footballer, but better known as a cricketer, managed England, played for England. A Surrey man. And so now, it was actually at the Oval. We were training at the Oval because he was connected to the club, so we could do some training there. And I went up to him on the steps of the Oval and I said, look, I think I've got this job. I think I might not be able to play. And if he'd said, no, Martin, look, you're in the team on Saturday and there's that, I would not have been sitting here. I promise you, I would have said that I'd play. What he actually said was, good luck, son. And so I thought, well, that's it. He's not going to be too bothered. I better give it a go. And it was a behind-the-scenes job as an editorial assistant. I cut the goals together for the preview program on Saturday. And then I missed not being at a football ground on a Saturday afternoon because even from 8 years old, when I was just a fan following Woking all over the place, and then to playing, it just seemed so weird not being out there. And so the only way I could get out there was to... what comes next after that. So I got lucky and I had being within television. Of course, I did a test tape or two, and you can play it to the right person. So and then a job came up. This one game in December 1974, which got me on the gantry. Not very professional.
ITV team.
ITV regional football. It was then.
It's so mad hearing that because you think like when you hear Martin. He was born with a microphone almost coming out of the room. It was commentary always something you wanted to do?
I never trained.
How did that kind of transition happen?
I had I'm a grammar school boy, the old grammar school system. It was a good education. So I think, vocabulary wise, I was sort of half suited. But no, I had no vocal training at all. My dad, we lived over a shop in West Byfleet. My dad was a shopkeeper, but he had a lovely voice. And when you were in one part of our flat overlooking the street, and my dad was out talking to customers in the street outside the shop, you could hear him from way back. he was
Velvet
the one.
Voice.
He had no affinity for football whatsoever. He never came to any. I never took him to a game that I commentated on. He never wanted to go. When I was playing charity football. When they'd retired from the shop, my mum and dad came and watched me. I was actually playing real football all those years ago. Why didn't you come and watch me then? So he couldn't. I could have had his voice, but his lack of love of football never coincided. We never really talked about how I was using my voice. But it happened, and I think I'd listened to Kenneth Woolston was a great commentator in the very, very, very early days. Yeah. And of course did the World Cup final in 1966. I listened, and I suppose some of that rubbed off. But when I went to do it, the only thing I had going for me was having played a bit, really, and knowing a little bit more about the game maybe than some other rookie starting out, you know. And that got me through the nervous bits, because I'd spent the previous 4 or 5 years trying to head in corners. So if I'm watching somebody in a game on the television, I had something going for. But I'm not saying that made a difference. I just loved being at football grounds, loved watching the games, and the best way to go is if somebody pays you to go watch it. And
exactly.
You actually confirmed a really big thing, right? So the younger generation are always debating, who does Martin Tyler support? Because on commentary, everyone's biased to their football club. So a goal might go in for United, or a goal might go in for Arsenal, and everyone be like, he over celebrated that one, and he didn't celebrate that one. He supports that team, but I've
got a story for you that will be. It's been working all my life.
There we go.
Just have to. I was assistant manager there from 2018 to 2022.
Yeah.
So that was weird, being in the dugout, being on the team photo for the team you supported. You'll understand this. The players, when they do the team photo, it has to be serious.
Yeah.
It has to be cool. There's one person on the working team photo those 4 years with a wide smile. I can't believe I'm here.
Look at your media.
Yeah. So. That's true. The thing that I'm quite a placid sort of person, really. The one thing that really knocks me is when people say, "Well, you must have a Premier League team."
Yeah.
Why must I have a Premier League team? Why? You know. And I was lucky with Woking, because in 1958 they won the Amateur Cup, the old Amateur Cup at Wembley, 71,000. My local team, 71,000. And I had coffee with the goalkeeper in that game last week, who's 89 now. And believe it or not, born on the same day of the year as me. I'm not 89, but the same 14th of September. And I might look 89, but I've got a few years to catch him up. But so I'm even in contact, so go back to my childhood to be able to talk about the game. And John Burley, his name is bright as a button, absolutely. And wonderful, his recollections. And to be able to share them, So... yeah, it's only been working, but of course in company. But the story I was going to tell you is of the Aguero game.
Yeah.
I went to an event, a reunion, and somebody pulled me. A City fan says, "We're very suspicious of you." He said, when QPR went 2-1 up in that game, you shouted too loud. I went, what? I said, they're near the bottom, they're trying to fight against relegation.
Yeah.
Now, if I hadn't shouted loud, people would be saying, why didn't you? But he was serious.
Yeah.
He was serious, and I respect that. We've all got our... I mean, the thing that I haven't been able to do, of course, I've commentated on Woking a few times, but I've never... it's actually much easier than you would think, because it's a game. Once you're into that game mode... But people might think they won at Millwall in a game in the FA Cup at Millwall, which was very good, and they won 1-0. Clive Walker, who played for Chelsea, and I think he scored the goal. And you get about 10 seconds at the end of a commentary where you go, well, that's the final score, and well, great night. And probably in those 10 seconds, you might detect a slight extra little dropping of joy in the response. But no, listen, I understand why people say what you've been saying, but I swear you will never see. No, that's something else. I like that. You got there in the end.
That was good. That went over my head for a second.
Like a lot of crosses when I was playing, Woking my team, and they're in the semi-final of the FA Trophy.
Nice.
So there's possibly another Wembley trip on
Wembley
the
trip,
horizon.
May.
Do you know
What
the
really
one?
stands
Do you
out?
know the one that I always remember?
Yeah.
With the accusations that you were a United fan for.
Yes.
Because was it Martial when
Yes.
he scored
Yeah.
against Crystal Palace?
No, against Liverpool.
Against
Yes,
Liverpool, was it?
Liverpool, yeah.
And then was
And
it
then Benteke, same game, scored the overhead kick.
Overhead kick.
Silent.
And people are like, hold on, why is he not giving that the same energy? And it's kind of like,
Have you seen? There's a guy online. He's called, I think, Andy Cantwell or something like that. He does these amazing like videos. They're actually so funny. He's basically like impersonating Martin, and he's a Liverpool fan. And then like he'll go through all the Liverpool goals and he'll repeat it how Martin is saying it, but he'll be like, with angry face, like, Salah has scored. Like these guys, just Liverpool fans have built that up.
I would, in my defence, get a whole catalogue of Steven Gerrard goals.
Exactly.
That is true.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you about that because you mentioned Aguero goal, and I think there's loads of moments and we'll probably get onto them in the podcast. But how do you strike the balance between painting the picture for the fans and also controlling the emotion? Because as you've been saying, you love football. So how do you strike that balance? Because like when you think of Gerrard, like, Aguero, like these, that's like pure emotion. But yeah, how do you strike the balance?
I knew you'd ask me a question or two like this, and I was thinking about it. Is I try to, I don't know, see history before my eyes, really, to try and put it. As you get older, it's a bit easier to do because you've got a lot of context of the past. There is a level of really special moments. If you asked me to do Aguero now, I couldn't do it because I needed that moment to happen. And the Steven Gerrard goals, you know, the one in the cup final against West Ham. So I suppose it's a sort of instant selection as to what this means, you know, and that you don't always get it right. And I'm never going to be very excited. Well, I can give you one where I was with Philippe Albert 5-0 for, I was going to say in a 5-0 win. This is 4-0, 5-0, but it doesn't really matter too much, does it? But Philippe Albert scored the 5th goal when Newcastle beat Man United 5-0. And so that was a glorious goal. You know, he chipped Peter Schmeichel. So I think that's what I try to do, but it's just it's a very reactive job, you know. I think rather like supporters, you sort of go with the flow of it, but you aren't a supporter. You're a supporter of football as a commentator, not a supporter of either team, you know. You just try and judge it on the day, and I had last night. We're talking. Obviously, people will listen a bit later, but I did Aston Villa beating Club Brugge in the second leg, and the first half was only notable because there was a sending off for them for Club Brugge, and Villa didn't really play very well, and you're thinking, well, they're going through. I've got to be careful here, but then Unai Emery obviously had a right go at them at half time. He made his changes. They came out and scored 3 goals in 12 minutes, something like that, and then you go with it, and you go, this is. And a friend of mine was at the game. And he messaged me last night, it's been nothing, a big Villa fan. I've never had anything like it, never seen anything like it here. So you have to recognise what it means. But had the game finished 0-0, they probably would have felt the same because they're still going to the... But for me, it wouldn't have been the same. You know, Rashford had a wonderful second half. Marco Asensio is unbelievable. How he's not really come in. I know he's named after Marco van Basten, but he's not really known for getting goals at that kind of rate. And they just went through the gears in the second half. So you've got to, you know, you come away and you think, you know, you can't change it. It's live, and it is live. Or it was anyway.
You talk about how much kind of like the job has changed and kind of how you have to strike a balance everything.
I don't think it has changed. I think I felt like that all the time.
Okay,
right from the beginning. I do it. I'm lucky enough to be asked to do it because of my passion for football, I think, and I still believe in, you know, bringing that kind of energy through passion to the game. But it is a football match, and if anything has changed, probably the sort of the fact that the whole thing is part of an entertainment network now. But for me, it's exactly the same game. of course, the rewards and the consequences of results are different and more dynamic, really, and a bigger range of it, instant reactions to games. But for me, people say, what's changed? I identify the players. I try and give some information at the right time.
Yeah.
The first leg of for the Brugge game, I did. Marco Asensio came on for the 50th time as a substitute in the Champions League. I thought that was a good stat. 50. Yeah, he's started 20 or something like that in all the years he's been at Real Madrid and PSG, and so to get to 50, and now he come on his 51st time now. But those kinds of things, that's a good stat, I think, to work in. And so that you try and do it at the right time when he comes on. You're not going to say it before he comes on. Or you hope not anyway, or you'd be struggling if you got that. So that's an informative thing. And I think, there's an interpretation. If you're doing a game on your own, then you've got to add that interpretive skill as well. But if you're sitting next to me and we're commentating the game, there are areas that you have first. We bounce off you, but you have the floor, if you like, the commentary floor on, he's moved that there, and they've come out in the second half and they're doing this. But all those elements are still, and that was the same at the beginning, I think. And so that's other people to judge, but that's how I go into it, with those things hopefully prepared properly for.
Yeah.
What you're mentioning now, what strikes me is, in this day and age, we know so much about footballers in terms of their preparation, etc. There's players doing days in their lives, etc. What is a day in life for Martin Tyler when you're commentating a game? What prep goes into that? What are the parts that we don't see from a commentator?
Well, it starts with me waking up and going, "Oh, I'm still here."
Oh my God!
Say no more. It got me dark.
I wasn't ready for that one.
I'm there for it.
I know. Listen, but the expression I use is the smell of the fixture. I've got to get the smell of the fixture right, and that can be something you can prepare a week in advance, or something. Well, you do that element of it, but the real stuff happens really on the day of the game, where the teams are announced, and from that point of view, then you've got to work out why. I mean, the last game I did keep referring back because it happened just a few hours ago. It was Club Brugge came with exactly the same team, the same subs. So having lost 3-1 at home, they thought they'd done well enough not to change it, and they did, because that game could have gone 3-1 the other way. And then you look at Villa and think, oh, now Leon Bailey scored a goal, but then was responsible for them scoring a goal by not tracking back the left back who scored to make it 1-1. He didn't start, so maybe that's a reaction to that. And Asensio's still on the bench, and Martinez was back in goal. He didn't play on Saturday. All those little things, Yeah. So that gets you to pretty much the 15. The teams are in the tunnel, and then you just get that feeling of, well, what's going to happen? And that's why you can, if you're a bit of an obsessive like me, and obviously you guys are going to carry on this until you're past my age probably, then let's go. The ball's on the centre. It's always the great moment. The ball's on the centre spot. You've got some idea in your mind as a commentator about that team and that team, and how are those things going to pan out?
I'm glad you said that, because you said usually you have some sense of what's panning out before you. But I want to try a little something. There's a young footballer I know, very great guy. We have a tape of his that I want you to review like it's real time. This, like I said, it's a promising footballer. He's got a lot of passion, plays with his heart on the sleeve. And you've not had prep on this. You don't know much about this player, but I want to get your view.
Know nothing about it.
I want to get your view on his performance.
Okay. Well, who am I looking at?
So it's a man called Fuad
Kadani.
You may not recognize him because he's actually got a haircut. He actually used to have dreadlocks, but here he is showing us his defensive performance.
Right centre back on the black team over there.
There we go, the white team.
Before Martin gets into his commentary, would you like to give a quick profile of the type of player you are?
This is the DR Sports versus AFTV charity game. It's meant to be just a light, friendly fixture amongst friends. But
Where was it played at the film?
this was actually, I believe, somewhere in North London. I don't know exactly.
Oh, here we are, somewhere in North London.
Somewhere in North London is this place. But it was just I always say once you cross the white lines, there are no friends. Yes. So
can I tell you that there are quite a few extra white lines here to cross as well?
It's a multi-purpose pitch, as you can imagine.
Can I tell you that his favourite player, now, some of us favourite players are Ronaldinho, some is Henry, some is Gerrard, Zidane. His favourite player is Marco Materazzi.
It's Sergio
so that
Ramos.
just tells
it's Marco Materazzi.
That tells you everything you need to know about what type of player he is.
But let's get to the tips.
So we're off here, and I'm a little bit worried about the players working out what part of the pitch they're in with the extra lines. Oh, now that is a strong challenge. I don't think the referee was quite... Well, how different you look. And no wonder there is some complaints from the officials, from maybe a fan as well. As they have fans here.
It's the ball 100%.
Let's have a look at it again.
Good tackle, to be fair.
Well, I refer that to Howard Webb at PGMOL. What the current guideline is, and lunging in. Would we say reckless, endangering an opponent?
Oh, come on,
I think it's a very fine call, and I would say I would just err on the side of the defender being entitled to go for that ball. And I don't think he's drawn any blood, but that might not be evident on the coverage here. Short of one or two cameras in key areas. Honestly, this is very competitive play, and very, 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 very competitive play. And I think they're calling for a red card here, aren't they? But you can get into trouble for brandishing that. It's kicking off here, isn't it? It's kicking off. And it's a sending off. And it's more than a sending off, it's a brawl. These are the things we say we don't like to see in football, but actually there are a lot of people watching this who do like to see this.
Tell them!
And there's a good number of people who feel like that sitting on the sofa here with me.
Look at this guy, he's lost his old man. That's quality.
That was brilliant.
That's quality. Oh gosh.
Come back in 3 months after the suspension's kicked.
Oh, this is the final one. Ooh.
Oh, there is more. So it wasn't a sending off.
No.
Look at this guy, man.
I got the ball though. That's all that matters.
Reckless, man.
Mine's lost for words.
I'm
blood, fire and thunder type of defender. You might go past me with the ball, but you ain't going past me as a man. I'm of that ideology.
Yeah, but that kind of football finished 30 years ago.
I'm still keeping it alive.
How are you trying to, before you were born? How are you now? I'm fascinated to know how you became this kind of player, because now we're talking about defenders don't defend like that anymore.
Yeah,
they're elegant. Rio Ferdinand changed the whole perspective about how you play from the back.
Yes,
and. For me, for the first 20 years of my commentary career, I'd be going, well played, that's the proper tackle. Now, you have to go with the flow of what's expected. And I think I'm a bit worried about the mental health of the opponents, and also the physical health as well.
It's a mental and a physical game, and I feel like the way kind of defenders are yin and yang. I always think, especially centre back partners. You always have one kind of aggressive front foot defender, and then you have the kind of composed Rolls Royce, if you like. Yeah. I want to be the front foot aggression.
Yes,
and as you said, I think it's that kind of intimidation.
I'm just trying to think if we sort of managed to adjust the time spans here, and I went into time capsule, how I would be able to play against you. I think I'd put one on you.
Kevin Davies style.
Yeah, no, not the elbow. That's sort of horrid. Yeah. I did that once in my career, and never again. Unfortunately, when you move your elbow when you're tall and somebody's shorter than you, you're going to catch them in the face. I did that once, and I basically absolutely. I was shocked. I would never do it again.
So you've seen the game change from the 80s. So we're going to start from like the 80s time, because Maradona's time and so many good players in that era. So you've seen the game change from the 80s all the way to 2020s. When you look at the eras from those five, so 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s, what era did you enjoy the most commentating on? And what era do you think you saw the most brilliant football players?
I would love to give you an answer to that, but for me, it's every game on every day that it was played, you know, and I think it's really hard to draw comparisons. Certainly the wonderful era of Messi and Ronaldo has been helped by the fact that the pitches are so much better, that the laws of the game have been adjusted to help stop brutality in the game, although present company accepts
trying to keep us alive.
So I find it very hard to do that. All I can say is, of its time, it remains just the people's game, everybody's game, the world game. You know, I think I've had so much privilege of going around the world, which commentators on other sports don't necessarily get that. Wherever you go, I think there's only about 4 countries in the entire world that don't take the Premier League, you know, which is an extraordinary compliment to our football. And I've always been proud that I think the game has become more global on the field, as it obviously we've been bringing in the players from all around the world and the attraction of playing in the Premier League. So I suppose the biggest thing that's happened in that time is the creation of the Premier League, and the change from but the pyramid underneath it, which being involved in non-league football, I'm very proud that, you know, you can work all your way up, although there are now financial restrictions, but I've managed teams against Salford City when they were in non-league, or coached, not managed, but being a coach on games against Salford. My last game as a player in the Isthmian League was against Wycombe Wanderers, and now, you know, they've been in the Championship. You know? So that you know, that kind of democracy, I think, is really important to it. And perhaps the elitism doesn't sit quite as well with me. The sort of feeling of not entitlement, because nobody is silly enough, I think, to say, well, we are a big club, we should be doing this. Everybody who follows football knows you have to earn it. And the disappointments are because of the relative failures perceived of that particular club. I don't subscribe to the view that we need a strong this, a strong that, or strong, and we need a strong league. And this year you could argue a little bit about the quality, but how exciting it is. You know, one of my next games is the cup tie between Brighton and Nottingham Forest, and then that would be sort of tucked away, really. But you know, apart from the fact that Forest beat Brighton 7-0 the other week, and they've won every game they played since Brighton, that was a real kick up the backside for them. And I was actually at the game, the league game, at the down at the Amex, which finished 2-2, and the red cards of Pandy Morgan, Gibbs White got sent off, and Nuno got a ban. There were problems with the Brighton dugout as well. So there's and that to me, that's a sparkling fixture because of the way these two teams are playing football, as well as the history of the games this season. So I suppose, in a sense, of being a child, a sort of child of post-war Britain, that, you know, that underdog spirit, you know, was drummed into us in our history lessons, but also it spills over into your love of sport. And I think the way the season's panned out, a bit like when Leicester won the league, of course, obviously, it's a similar sort of thing, that we are in a situation where anything can happen. And I think that's the best situation, really. I think if you want to be a top club and be top in the league, you've got to earn it, as Liverpool are doing this season, and other clubs aren't doing it. I did a version of Tottenham Man United, and you had to find them. You know, it's a stellar fixture. We used to call them Grand Slam fixtures when I was at Sky, and there they are. They were, I think, on the day they were 14th and 13th or something like that. Probably not too different as we're speaking now, but it happens. I remember them getting relegated. I remember Tottenham getting relegated in the 70s. Both clubs got relegated. So, you know, it happens, and I think it's this sort of cyclical thing, or that you should be encouraged as an owner of a club to try and win things, not just to challenge the elite. And I can remember going to, it was a really, I thought, very good for the game, Portsmouth v Cardiff, FA Cup final. An English manager was going to win a trophy. It was Harry Redknapp, as it turned out. Dave Jones was the Cardiff manager. And I was driving to the game, and somebody said on the radio, hang on a minute. They said, well, we're not enjoying this cup final today because none of the big teams are in it. And I'm going, what? Oh, it should be seeded. That was the other thing in part of this conversation. We should seed it. We shouldn't be allowing this to happen. Well, of course we should.
It's the magic of the FA Cup.
Of course we should.
Yeah.
But now it's the magic of the Premier League in that sense, isn't it, as well? And then the 30-odd years we've had the Premier League, we've had 50 teams. 50 teams have been in the Premier League. There's a quiz question for you when you go down the pub. Name the 50 teams that have been in the Premier League.
Sheffield Wednesday. Sheffield Wednesday.
Talk about the life cycle of the Premier League there. When it initially started with B Sky B, could you see it becoming as big as what it became today? Because I feel like if it was starting in this day and age now, you've got the internet, you've got social media, YouTube, and all these things to kind of push it out. But back then was a whole different kind of landscape. It
was professionally terrifying, really, because you just didn't know. I was having a sort of solid grounding to my broadcasting career with ITV and enjoying it very much. And I was not the first person to be contacted to be what became Sky. So there was a big risk involved. And then suddenly we had an FA Cup contract, I think, and there was some live games, but football wasn't live very much. So we suddenly on the satellite platform, we had live games, and then the Premier League happened. And I suppose that's the accident of birth, really. I'd had enough experience. As I say, I certainly wasn't the first choice to go there.
You're the right choice.
Well, I think
right choice.
It felt right. It fell right in my journey, if you like. That I'd had enough experience. I'd done the World Cup final. I'd done for ITV. I'd done the Maradona handball game. So I'd had a fair amount of experience, but I was still relatively young enough to be seen as somebody who could carry it forward a little bit. But we didn't know. We used to go by train to some of the games up north, and you'd go through places, and it was the satellite dish, that was so you'd go through a place on the journey, you go, how many dishes are out there? You go, oh, there, good luck to them. There's in that street, there's 8 dishes. Well, thumbs up. If we could have applauded the people who lived in the houses, we would have done. So it went, it was... But there was something that the first Premier League weekend did feel like it could take us somewhere. But of course, there were more people in the ground than there were watching, probably. And I did the first game. The first Sky game was Nottingham Forest against Liverpool on the Sunday. But I did a Saturday game on the first round of fixtures, and that was Leeds, who were the champions, the last champions of the old Football League, as it was, against Wimbledon. And so I went from there to the City Ground, and that was the first weekend, really. And I'm delighted for everybody involved. I mean, there was a lot of speculation by those who made those decisions, and football itself, I mean, it was breaking down the structure that existed for a long time.
Massive
game changer.
I was going to say a massive part of my childhood, all of our childhoods, people watching this, is your commentary, but it's also you in video games. It's also you and Andy Gray. What is it like commentating together with someone with that level of passion? How did you find that working relationship?
Well, it was a role reversal, wasn't it, really? I mean, the commentator's supposed to be the one who shouts his socks off. And the analyst is supposed to be cool, calm and collected. And we did it the other way around. Andy is a fantastic person, great player, and great love of football, at all levels. Played non-league football at the end of his career, and he drove. He did so much for the early years of Sky. I think in the company as well, in the football department, he wouldn't settle for any cutting corners.
Yeah.
He wanted to show respect for the game as we were covering it in a way that showed our love for the game, but also that he was very proud of the career that he'd had. And he was much more important than me than getting it off the ground. But we did have a very good working relationship, and obviously that followed on with various other with Alan Smith on the computer game, and also with Gary and Cara, and more recent years, Sky. So I'm still a little bit starstruck about being with these guys. They've been out there doing it, and then suddenly I'm sitting there saying, what was it like when you did this? How did you cope with them? And so that's my privilege. Even if we weren't broadcasting, I'd want to ask him that question. But I was allowed to do it for the benefit of the audience, really. So it's very important, I think. Of course, when I started commentating, it was just one, so you had to sort of sink or swim really on your own. But I really enjoyed it. I did the World Cup final with the great Ian St John in 1982. The Saint and Greaves. It was a wonderful program through the 80s for ITV. Jimmy Greaves and Ian St John were both brilliant people, very bright and funny, and created a niche. And those shows are still being shown now on some of these retro channels. And I would, if you haven't seen it, it's such a. And I was lucky enough to be a reporter to enjoy their fun, their humour. But with the serious side and a respectful side to it, I think respecting the game, respecting the people in it is an important part of how I've tried to go about my business.
When you were doing your commentary, when you're doing your commentary with him, and there's obviously I would probably say the most iconic moment, as we kind of touched on it a little bit, is the Gerrard, and then he says, "Oh, you're beauty," right?
I didn't speak for another 5 minutes.
Yeah, he was going off, right? But is there a particular footballer's name? Is there certain names you just loved shouting?
Roll off the tongue.
Because honestly, all on the playground, before we line up a screamer, we're saying Gerrard in your voice. We're saying Rooney. We're saying these names in your voice. Gerrard. Is there a particular name that you just love saying it?
I think one's ending in O. I've got something. Because had Edin Dzeko scored the winner, he'd scored the equaliser. I guess I probably would have launched myself into something similar. But the South American, that was obviously a one-off in football, and you're lucky enough to keep up with it. Really, I think that's a thing. When I look back on that and thinking, well, I'm okay with how it sounds. So the pictures are brilliant. I mean, that's something we haven't touched on. What I could never do radio commentary. My style is stop, start, stop. It's like pausing. I'm at my very best when I'm silent. I'm sure everybody watching would agree with that. But it is a knowing when to and when not to speak is something that I think you've got to start. I always say to commentators, be yourself, So I can't tell anybody else how to commentate. I can give them some pointers, like I say, about identification and information, and I do that. And there are a lot of young people wanting to do it. But how you go from there is being yourself, Maybe a projected version of yourself, But it's there. There's lots of opportunities now, lots and lots. And how I got my, as I mentioned, destiny and fate and all that stuff. And I do really believe a bit in that, because it when you look at it, it wasn't, I've come here on the Victoria line, and that's a straight journey. Mine was like that. So I would say anybody listening and watching would go for it if you want to do it.
I was going to say, you asked about the FIFA aspect as well, and I'm sure there's a younger generation that nowadays maybe don't watch live football as much, but they will spend hours on their PlayStation. At the time, you'd probably been doing the Premier League for about a decade or so. How did that come about? And then also, did you know you'd be doing it for that long? What's the process like of doing that? Is it just sitting there recording phrases for just hours or something like that? And what was that kind of like for you? Because did you know it was going to have that kind of ripple effect as well?
It came at a time in my career where I was a bit more available than I would have been before or after. and I got offered to do it. They changed for some reason. I don't know why they changed, but so I did it for 1 year, sort of like, okay, I can do it. And I didn't realise, I don't think anybody realised we're going back nearly 20 years now, that it would be so popular. Actually, the process of doing it is pretty much as you say. I sort of freestyled it really, because they give you a script that said throw-ins. So and they go, we want 10. So I'd go, it's gone out for a throw. He thinks it's his throw. That'll be a throw now, and the game will restart with a throw. He's going to take a long throw, looking for something from the throw-in to try and find a teammate. He's thrown it quickly. There's 7, 8, and it was like that, repetitive, over and over again. And the worst of the goals, I have done this on another podcast. If you don't mind me doing it again,
of course.
Say it again. But you have a name. I would say like Shearer was one, obviously, that I shouted a lot in real time. Or Gerrard, Gerrard if you like. So go, Gerrard. Gerrard. Now you'd have 5,000 names to do like that. So what we would do, I suppose over the year, we might have 12 sessions or something like that to get the whole thing. At the end of each day, depending on how much energy or how much my vocal cords will put up with it, I'd do a chunk, maybe 200 names like that. And you just get into a mindset of doing it. And then you go, how does he pronounce his name? There'll be some players that I've always been tried to be very hot on pronunciation. So you'd have to do 3 versions till somebody else could find out whether he pronounced it. I mean, so actually, as it got more and more towards the end of the time I was doing it, you could check pronunciations online, which I still do. Still do quite a lot, and there are still variations. You get players called different names by different commentators, as you're well aware. So you try to get it. If it's on the game, the player will play the game himself, probably. So I did that. It was quite a long run. I didn't realise it was sort of a longish run until the guy who decided I'd been on enough said, you've been on this longer than any other person. So I sort of took that as a coded message to say I wouldn't be on it much longer, and it turned out that way. So he sort of prepared me for the exit door. But it was great fun, and going around was just living my life. People do still come up and ask me about it, and 1 or 2 people come up with phrases, and I go, did I really say that? And we did so much. And then the things Leicester versus Arsenal was the Alan Smith derby, and we couldn't keep saying that because I don't know how many people played Leicester versus Arsenal. It always came up as the Alan. So it was quite difficult because the more specific, the more interesting the stories were to tell. The more repetitive they were for people going, well, why? So you sort of had to mix a lot of generic stuff, but different. So they go in and say, we want to refresh. Why can't we just use those bits again? And the one thing, when the reviews came out of the game was usually the end of September, something like that came out.
September, November.
And so the reviews came out. If they said the commentary sounded the same, we'd be devastated. We'd spent the whole year trying to make it sound different. No, it was a lovely part of. I'm very grateful that came my way.
So we've got something where we're gonna get up show you some kits, right? Some classic football kits.
Yeah, and I'm very into kits.
We need to know what your first thought, your first memory of what player comes to mind and what moment comes to mind when you see these kits. So these are part of some of your most iconic commentary moments. What do you think of when you see this kit?
Well, for Arsenal, I would say probably the first Wenger year, when that sums it all up. The Steve Bolter, Tony Adams. But I'm very good at telling you which club it is, but I'm not very good at telling you which era they wore. They wore the shirt, so that might be
This was 99.
Yes.
It was about 98, 99. This was actually
98 was the Tony Adams goal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And 99 was when Manchester United did the treble. So I don't know why the Arsenal fans will be
do you know what? This was the kit
Go on.
that Kanu scored his legendary hat trick, and you came with that beautiful.
Well, I can tell you a story about that.
Yes.
My son was 12 years old, I suppose. I was born in 87, 11 years old. And he'd come to the games with me. And a wonderful guy called Gary Lewin, who was the England and Arsenal physio for many years, and now works for Arsenal on the women's game, is a brilliant friend of mine. I'm so grateful that he's helped me so much in going around the world. We've kept each other company and things like that, so we're very good friends. And my son came to that game, and too young to sit on the gantry. The gantry on the opposite side to where it is now, by the way.
Okay.
Anyway, so Gary got him a seat close to where the Arsenal entourage was sitting. And then it started to rain, and we hadn't really come prepared. So he got a warm-up top for my son. And after the game, I was saying goodbye, and I said, I'm giving the top back. And he said, no, you can keep that. That's car news.
So that's
a serious memorabilia over there.
Serious memorabilia, yeah. And it's still in the house. So there's no way I'd be cashing it. That was a personal thing.
Nah.
And so it just happened. The gift was given before the goals. So, so it wasn't the other way around. Oh, here's Carney's got a hat-trick. Here's something from him. It just worked out like that. So
did you prep that line? Or was that just pure instincts? The can you believe it? Because that's that's world class.
It was the turnaround in the game, and the fact that one player was so responsible for it. It wasn't a live game in this country. I don't think it was one of our world games that was going around the world. So 3:00 kickoff, I think. But that was.
The play on words is just legendary.
And it's like the infamous "and it's live." Is that something?
I hope it's not infamous. It might be.
Oh, sorry, famous. Sorry, Well, but is that something that just kind of came naturally and just you kind of stuck with, or was it a thing where once you arrived at Sky, you was like, I need a line?
No, that definitely wasn't that. This is how it happened, right? We had a thing called a turbo break, which was right at just before the kickoff, 30-second break. Big money from whoever,
the ads.
and for that ad, because people who don't watch the build-up would be tuned in for the game, and they'd be there a couple of minutes early. So this ad would be the most seen ad, and I had to go into it and saying, "Well, coming up after this is a." So I needed to, and for me don't forget, I did many years where there was no live football. So for me, still now, to do live games, it's just a little bit different, I think, from the younger commentators who've done all their games live. Anyway, so I needed every week, maybe twice a week, I would have to say into this. So I thought I just need some. So here it is. It's Chelsea v Arsenal, and it's live, which meant it's coming up just after. So we did that, and then and that worked. And then it was probably me trying to avoid having to think of something fresh to say every week or twice a week. Anyway, then they changed the rules because the ad that was 30 seconds before kickoff was a betting ad, and there were complaints that the betting company were getting too close. And the betting companies recognised this. I believe this was their initiative to say, let's go back 6 minutes. So we won't intrude in those times. And the television company said, rather than find another company, a different subject altogether for the turbo break, as we call it, they said, well, no, we go back, we'll play that game. And I believe that still is in place today. So I didn't do it at the start of that season, the new rules. I didn't do it, and because it was well early, Anyway, people came back and said, why aren't you saying it? So the producers were saying, well, I better do what I'm told here. And so we came up with the rule, which people will remember because it's far more recent, where at the end of the team captions, I did "and it's live." So we went to the break then. And then I kept saying, when someone else has got to speak. I can't keep speaking after I've done all this, you know. Anyway, so that's what happened, and it stuck, and right to the end. I still do it for the world feeds. I still do it. Yeah,
it got dramatic. It got slowly dramatic more every single year. It was like, let's get ready to rumble, and it's live.
Yeah, well, people would say that to me, and if I'd given it like just like you've done it, very well, you did it as well. They would say, "Oh, that was a." So I thought that's what people want, especially as I'm sort of commentator that waits for the moment for what I regard as the great moment to do that as in my actual commentary, rather than do every goal the same, So I thought, people do that, and I have got the capacity to give it and it's live, and I can do that, you see. And it's live!
There we go, let's go.
You hear that before a game.
I can't do Aguero.
No. We're going to get, we got some other ones.
Church,
So what legendary commentary moment was this one from? Can you remember this one?
Was it the Champions League final? Drogba, yeah.
That moment, you're Drogba, and Gary Neville's.
That was Gary Neville doing that. Was the semi-final.
That was Torres.
You're blending together.
Yeah. The memories is too much.
Not even in the same country, let alone the same game. And I didn't do the game where Gary chortled or whatever word he wanted to do it. That was, I think, it was Alan Parry did a very good job, as he always did on that game, and. But of course, when Drogba scored to equalise, that came very soon after. We talked about, they took Thomas Muller off. He'd scored, and they brought on Daniel Van Boyten, who was a defender. Is a defender, and I thought, Gary and I were talking about it. It's dangerous that you invite pressure, but we never thought that when they had a corner and they scored straight away. And then, of course, Didier took the penalty to win the Champions League, and he then mucked me up because I said it was his last kick as a Chelsea player, which it was, and he came back. I've never really forgiven him.
Let's get the next one, of course.
I guess
This goes without saying. We've mentioned it already a few times, but I mean, the adrenaline that you must have been going through as well in this Aguero moment must have been something where you said it in the commentary. I swear
you'll never see anything
like this again.
Like, a couple of years ago, it nearly did happen again. I was doing the game, and when they were playing Villa, weren't
Do you know what's super funny about this, Martin? There's a link between another guest of ours, Julian Lescott, who came on, and he says that something that's always forgotten in this game is Howler and the own goal he scored. So it's quite funny to have you on. But when you see that, what feelings do you feel seeing that jersey?
Just lucky to be there, really. It was Manchester City's moment. It was Sergio's moment. And I didn't muck it up. I think that's the other thing as a commentator. Anybody you might even feel the same about this. You want to go away thinking, that was okay. As a commentator, very rarely do you think you've done well. I promise you. That's just not the way. It's 2 hours unscripted. So even if you've had really good moments, there'll be a moment in there that maybe only you will know. But you can't get rid of it easily. As I've got older, I go through a process, and if it's happened in an afternoon, I sort of sit in the evening, and then I go to sleep. If I don't dream about it, I get up in the morning and it's gone. Because you have to, otherwise you just carry around it and you just go on a downward spiral, because you can't do it perfectly. You can try to do it perfectly, but you can't. But that was, I don't know. I listen to it now, and it's like somebody else doing it. It's not really me. I think a lot of commentaries like that, and sometimes I'm really glad that I wish that wasn't me, but I can forget that it's me, if you see what I mean. But it does get played a lot, and it would be disarmingly untruthful for me to say that I don't feel a special feeling about it, because I suppose it's something. We talk about the '66 World Cup and Kenneth Wilson and Brian Moore with the Anfield. It's up for grabs now, and there were one or two other moments, and even to be in that company which people put this into it's very humbling, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And Sergio was wonderful about it. 'Cause I didn't really talk about it until he was about to leave. They fixed up an interview. Sky fixed up an interview, and I thought I talked about it all the time, but he was just so charming about it. And it was funny because I thought I've got to give him something, so where are the notes? I mean, if you came to my house, this is really posh here. Yeah. I promise you, my house is a mess of football memorabilia and trivia and stuff and notes. And I thought, I'd love to give him the notes.
That's nice.
The original notes, not a copy, but the original notes. And I thought, I'll never find them. I've got a Man City file about like this. And this is the truth. I went like that in the middle of it, and it opened where the notes were.
Wow.
I said this, so I cut them out. I found a picture framer I'd never met before. I said, it's got to be 2 pages. It's got to be a picture. And they all did it all in about 24 hours before I actually got up. There was still, COVID was still sort of about, and I had to have tests and everything to get in to be with him. And then I thought, he's leaving. He's going to be given the wealth of Manchester City, and there's my little wooden frame of my notes. But he said, "Oh, will you sign it for me?" And well, of course, I
love that.
To Sergio, and he was just lovely, and that sort of, I suppose, was closure on it, really, to be able to discuss it with him. I'd seen him a few times, but I'd never gone up to him and said, "By the way, I'm the one that did," and I wouldn't dream of doing that. So when we came in, he always had a million things to do, presentations, but he gave me full attention, and it was. I think the world of him. He's given me something in terms of. The one thing I did say to him, so I knew you could score before you knew you'd score. Yeah. I've said that a few times, but because he took a touch, and he's Sergio Aguero, and the absolutely grade A goal scorer. Yeah. So maybe that was air in the lungs, I don't know, but you can't say, you don't plan it, you don't script it. That's the other question I don't. Yeah. When did you write that before? If you, what? I imagine that would happen.
We've got 2 more where you've had legendary moments. Do you remember which moment we are talking about from this season for this one?
Well,
this is
I've got the Jamie Vardy moment where he broke Van Nistelrooy's record. Yeah,
that one I feel is one of the best ones because it's like you rhymed it, like 11 heaven, like. Usually you just say, "Oh, Vardy's broken Van Nistelrooy's record," but the 11 heaven was just so. Well, first, Van Nistelrooy is my favorite player, so I didn't like that. But at the same time, that was just like
they are working together, so they must be friends now. The whole Leicester thing around that, and Jamie's still there, and of course, his legacy is amazing for that football club and for himself. The things that happened. I suppose the game when they won the title was, of course, not at Leicester, not involving Leicester, was when the Battle of the Bridge, which was at Chelsea Spurs. I'm really sorry.
I'm being haunted.
And I haven't been over complimentary about your aggressive form of defending. I mean, I'm really sorry. You're inching further away. But that was some night. That was, and to say at the end, Leicester City are the champions was incredible. I was lucky that I happened to be there, because you often get the title being won when you're not at the game. I saw Leicester the other week at West Ham, and obviously they're really struggling this season, but I think you'd rather have, if you're a Leicester fan, you'd rather have what's happened,
100%,
and have the struggles to pay the price for it, if you like, than just stay in the Premier League and of course make more money by doing it. But that was an extra. They'd lost 3 games. And they won by 10 points.
Incredible.
You forget that. You think, Leicester, they must have sneaked it. It was amazing. I remember when they won it, I wasn't commentating on the game. It was a Saturday morning game, and I was coaching at Hampton Richmond Borough, and the boys it was a morning game at Man City. And they
won at Etihad.
They were watching it on their devices, as you do nowadays, and I thought they are going to win it. That was such an amazing result, and to be there. The story that's not told very often is when they went up to get the trophy, the sound had failed at Sky.
Oh.
So I didn't say much until pretty much 5 seconds before the trophy left. And I was going, oh, what can I can't do anything about it. It's not it's not. But in the nick of time. So whatever they play, if you ever see it on the Premier League years or something like that, was we never added to it afterwards. It was just there, that one sentence, I think, before the amazing Leicester City or whatever I said. And when you're making me feel very nostalgic.
We've got one more moment. This is Manchester United 08-09. I feel like this was Aguero before Aguero. I'm not gonna lie.
This is the proof of concept.
Do you know what moment we're talking about?
Makeda?
Oh, that was the moment.
He's offered to come and play for Man United, hasn't he? Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that.
Well, they could use him right now.
I'm not sure that it was reported quite as he said it. You know, if they need me to help him out, it might have been like that. You know,
that moment. Wow, that commentary for that moment.
But it was such a shock, and he was so young, and it was such an important goal.
Yeah,
and
you felt
I've had so many
in your
games.
Voice.
But I was talked about, you know, this sort of not consciously loving the underdog, but feeling, oh wow, this is something that's perhaps not supposed to happen. You know, this is against the logic of the fixture. So I think that appeals to most commentators, you know. But you think I've done thousands of games, and you've kindly picked out a few of them, you know. But for me, the thing perhaps that I'm most proud of is that I've done the years, really, because I think achieving something is doable. Sustaining it is much harder, and I don't know, people should be saying, oh, why don't you pack it in and everything, but I just love doing it. And it's not for recompense, of course. You get paid for the job, but the truth is, it's more than that, and it's the depth of feeling for football is probably out of proportion with what any one human being should feel. But I know I'm not alone. There are millions of people around the world. I'm not saying I'm special. Maybe I'm commentating for the millions who feel that about the game. You know, I try not to be too cynical. I try and rationalise things that go wrong in the game. I was an average enough player to know the difficulties of what they're being asked to do, you know. And so I try to see the sunny side of it, if you like, without eliminating the negative. You know, maybe accentuating the positive is something that I've subconsciously tried to do. It's only when I talk to you guys that I think about it, to be honest, because it's not something that I analyse. It's something that you just do, and you criticise yourself, and you come away from games thinking, I could have done that. Why did I say that? Oh, I stumbled over that now. Why? I've got to practice that name a bit more, you know. But really, it's as my podcast says, the joy of football.
We have got some quick fire questions. You can give a one-word answer if you wanted to. Okay, so best stadium to commentate in?
Well, it used to be Liverpool when the old gantry. It's not so good now because it's a bigger stand and it's further away. But the one, the original, it was the original really, which hung from the roof. And you had to wiggle your way up various ladders to get there. That was the best because, of course, you were also watching, I'm talking about the late 70s through the 80s. You were watching the best team often in the world, let alone in the country, you know. So that was very special. It's still a great place to visit, Anfield, but it is further back now. It was one of the few bonuses of COVID. This is not a one-word answer, is it, by the way? Was that we were allowed to go into the stands. So we rekindled when they won the league. And, of course, with no crowd, we were able able to do that game and the games that season from a very advantageous position.
Wow.
So now I like Crystal Palace a lot. That's a good close commentary. You like to be close.
Yeah.
It's very selfish, but you do.
Okay, your favorite player of all time?
Difficult because they're all centre forwards, but Marco van Basten, I would say.
That is a good one. That is a good one. Okay, your most like goosebump moment.
When Woking got promoted to the National League. I was assistant manager. I wasn't actually there. The semi-final was amazing against Wealdstone. We were 2-0 down with about 12 minutes to go. We won 3-2 in normal time.
Yeah.
And at the final, playoff final, I was with Gary Neville at Brighton, and under strict orders, nobody to tell me anything. The kickoffs were the same time, and then we did the game. The City won the league and won the match, and then Gary stuck his phone in front of me. It said Woking called the Cards, short for Cardinal Red. He just said on the screen, Cards promoted.
Wow.
So it's not a commentary moment, but it was at a commentary at the moment. So.
Your best commentary performance?
That's for others to judge.
That's true. That's true.
I can't say that.
Yeah. No. Okay. Your favorite commentary line?
Some people are on the pitch, they think it's all over. Kenneth Wolstenholme, we won the World Cup in 1966.
Wow.
I think that's the one because it was, and they think it's all over, and it is now. And Jeff fired in his hat-trick and the fourth goal. I just think that's perfect
moment,
perfect. But for me, just getting the goal scorer right every game you go in, you're thinking now with so many goals from corners, the little flicks on the two Arsenal goals against Man United I did in December, because sometimes it's just like a little nick off somebody else, and so you want to be right. The trick for the commentators is who celebrates the most. If you don't know for sure. But I did do one game where both players celebrated equally, and they both kicked the ball a long time ago. It was in the 70s. It was a Birmingham City goal. Trevor Francis and Kenny Burns were the two players. That was.
Who got the goal?
One ran off that way, one ran the other way.
Last one. Of course, you've seen the Premier League from the inception. I'm not going to do an all-time 11, but if you had to create best six-a-side team in Premier League history for yourself, we'll start in goal. Who's your goalkeeper?
Oh, you've thrown this at me, really, haven't you?
Yes, that's why it's quick fire.
It's very slow fire. I think Peter Schmeichel probably for personality. I'd like to have him and also he'd moan at everybody else. So
Peter Schmeichel in goal.
Yeah.
You can have two defenders. You can have three midfield. It's up to you. But we'll go with a defender. Who's your
I'll have
defender?
one defender. I think I'm not a defensive. Best defender, Premier League history. Wow.
Yeah.
I suppose there's a decreasing number now because defending is a different art.
Speaker
used to be,
I tell you who I loved as a player, and he could probably do the job. And this is personal, remember?
Yeah.
Stuart Pearce, I loved.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd like to have
Real men.
I'm going for men in my team.
Yeah,
real men.
Let's
Endorsement.
go. We've got Pearce. All right, we're gonna go midfield. First midfielder in there.
Well, we'll just pick attacking players. I mean, Eden Hazard would be in there.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Martin. Oh, I want to celebrate that one. Honestly, I want to celebrate. Okay, we got Eden Hazard in there.
He'd also qualify as the most laid back, enjoy the rest of his life footballer while still being a top footballer.
Literally.
Because he was at I live near the Chelsea training ground, and he's legendary for having a quick bite to eat after training, going home playing with his kids.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was. I love that perspective, and then he'd go out on the pitch and be a genius, Shearer's got to play.
Okay, so Shearer's in there. So we've got Hazard, we've got Shearer. Okay, we've got two more positions, two more players.
How big is the pitch? Is it a city or six-a-side pitch?
Yeah, six-a-side
so
pitch.
Distances aren't going to matter too much.
No.
I might have Stevie G in there, I think.
Okay, so we got Gerrard, we got Hazard, Pierce, Schmeichel, and Shearer. We got one more. Yeah, one more player to make the Martin Tyler six-a-side Premier League history team. Kevin De Bruyne, Wayne Rooney, Thierry Henry. There's so many. Cristiano.
There are so many to pick from. With the Thierry.
There we go.
Thierry and Shearer.
Gerrard,
Hazard in the pocket. Oh.
There we go. That's the Martin Tyler.
I think my attackers, apart from Eden, would all track back.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want Eden to track back.
And the last question is, who is going to win the Champions League this year?
Well, that's when I left. They were still, when Villa finished, they were still playing in Madrid.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, my goodness, maybe they're going to go out, the iconic Champions League club. I think that rather like the Premier League, is from just going on the last round of games, okay, and then they've never won it at Paris. I think I would think there are a lot of people. I know there's always questions about ownership and if you like projects and things but they've worked so hard to try and get a team and they've had some pretty painful. I was thinking of Unai Emery 4-0 up when he was in charge of 4-0 up against Barcelona, and then they go and lose 6-1. Do you know what? I did the 4-0, and for reasons because of a Sky game, I couldn't do the second leg. And the game that I did, I think that you'd have to check this out. I was on Sky duty, Manchester City 0, Stoke City 0 on the Wednesday night. And people kept telling me that Barca had scored again. So, I just thought the performance in the first leg was amazing, and the second leg Liverpool gave as good as they got. But to beat Liverpool, I loved Arne Slot to say that's the best game I've been involved in, and he was a loser. I think that shows real class, So I'm not sure they will win it, but I guess obviously as an Englishman, I would like Arsenal or Aston Villa to win it, but just on football globally, if you like, and I know you love the game outside this country and love it in its context. So whether they will, but I'll plump for them if you want one.
Nice. Martin, honestly, speak on behalf of all of us, the many people watching this, thank you for being an inspiration. Thank you for being the voice. Thank you for being the soundtrack to many memories that will stay with us for the rest of our lives. I don't think you realize how important you are to multiple generations, and you've made football enjoyable for the masses. So thank you so much for sharing just a bit of your journey with us. It's much appreciated. You're welcome back anytime. We'll be coming down to working games. If you need a centre half, I've got a centre half for you.
We do weekly. We do the podcast weekly on Sundays after every game. So if there's any time you just want to come and talk about the current Premier League fixtures,
the journey was very good.
Yeah,
even your directions to get here from Finsbury Park too, was spot on. And I only had to wait 1 minute outside in the rain. You've looked after me, Brent, and honestly, you've said some really heartwarming things for me. I don't deserve what you've said. I really don't, but I do. We all recognise we're members of a worldwide community of football lovers, aren't we? And if we can pass on the pleasures that we've had from the game, and you're going to have many more, and hopefully I'll have a few more as well. It is a bit of a pinch me, the 50 years. I can't really believe that it's all gone. It's where's it gone? But it's been a hell of a ride, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. Well, there've been 1 or 2 moments, naturally. But when it's really hard to explain this feeling of dissatisfaction when you've done a game, So the fact that overall people who aren't so nitpicky as the commentators themselves have enjoyed me spouting off for 50 years. Bless you, thank you.
Long may it continue as well. That has been another episode of FCM with Martin Tyler, the GOAT, the footballing voice. We'll be back soon. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. We're out.
Peace.
Amazing. Thank you so much, man. Honestly, absolute pleasure.
Pleasure.
You've been in the film.
That was him. Yeah. The clip from the Dion where I was obviously crunching man out.
Oh yeah.
Your accent. You should get sent off.
Yeah, man. One more. Did anybody ask any questions of Man United with the new stadium about how they're going to improve the public transport? It's bad enough now.
Yeah. Even with the people, how many more people are going to be there? The traffic in Old Trafford, I think it's actually incredible.
What they're gonna have to do is, when the City Stadium was made for the Commonwealth, there was a rejuvenation project.
Yes.
They're gonna have to do that for the whole area. They're gonna have a train station. They're gonna have to do everything. There's no way you can expect 100,000 people.
But City have only got the tram, haven't they?
But it kind of still works.
But you can walk. You can walk from Piccadilly.
Exactly. Whereas Old Trafford's so far.
Yeah, it is.
You need the train terminus. That's.
I need a. What's the line I need? And it's live, yeah.
We'll do that.
Let's go. Look who I'm with.
And it's live.
Let's go. That's so good, bro. It's so good.
Yeah.
This is Don Robbie, the owner.
This
the
is
owner.
this
the
is the Don Hojo.
Nice to meet you.
No, pleasure. Oh no.
This is FCM on DR Sports, and it's live.
That is so iconic.
That's so good. That's so good. You ain't got that on your podcast, bro. You ain't got that on yours.
You ain't got no money. Hey, I'm taking that to culture.